Hi, everybody. It is Chris Grimm, and this is Deep Work Fast. And today, I got a lot to talk about in 20 minutes or less every Tuesday around 3 p.m. Pacific time. I bring you tools, concepts, and ideas so that you can be the best at whatever you're doing: parent, partner, boss, employee, all the roles in your life. I want you to be really great at it. So let's get to it. This week, dropped a blog. It's a big one. In fact, I'm doing about 2 weeks at least of focused on this content because it has two big pieces when put together. It's like peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and chocolate, whatever you like. It's a great combo. And the reason I'm doing this is because many of you know I am not only a coach, I'm an advisor to a number of startups. And what I notice in not only a startup environment, but something similar in companies that have been around for a while, is that when change happens, it gets messy. And most people, no matter how much change they've experienced, seem to kind of hiccup a little bit during change, sometimes a lot of it, depending on if they're in control of the change or not. Sometimes even when you're the person making the change, if you think about it, you get into it and it feels bad because maybe other people are resisting or things aren't actually going the way you planned. And so I thought I would just talk about this messiness that happens. And it is different, by the way, for adults than kids. Today I'm going to talk about adults. And the two pieces of the blog, if you download that, you'll see I talk about the messiness factor and why and how we tend to get stuck and it gets messy. And then some people, if they have no awareness about what I'm about to show you and tell you about, or they've been through a lot and they're stressed out, they're not able to take control of themselves, they actually can get like stuck, like paralyzed, freeze, not sure how to make decisions and move forward. Some people regress. What I mean by that is they go backwards. They try to hold on to things, cling to old ways. They don't want to go forward with the change. That can last a long time. For some people, it lasts forever and then they quit. Or they just tend to, like I said, get kind of stuck there for a little bit, maybe swirling around, maybe causing problems for themselves and other people before they can move forward. And the reason for that, I believe, no matter what the situation is, like I said, it could be a startup environment where there is a lot of messiness usually, and that's necessary. Let me just say that. In formative entrepreneurial environments, we need experimentation. That's kind of the fun of being in a startup, by the way, is you're trying to find the product, the service, the pattern that your stakeholders, your customers, your investors, etc., are going to want to invest in and buy more of in the future. But it takes a bit before we do that. That's why for some of you who have never been in a startup environment, you can think about platforms, for instance, where for a really long time, Facebook's a great example, it functioned and it didn't have a monetary strategy. They didn't know how they were going to make money. They just got a whole bunch of people to use the platform and advertisers to pay for it. Now, get away from Facebook for a second. That was just an example so you could start to understand, if you don't know, that many startups spend a lot of time cycling through, experimenting, trying to figure out how their product or service is going to be so unique, special, and accepted by the world that they have to try a lot of things first. And that can cause necessary messiness. But that doesn't mean that the humans inside the messiness love the messiness. They might like parts of it, but they don't always like things changing all the time. Let me shift for a second. In big companies, many big organizations, or even a family business, you've got to respond to what your customers want, what your employees need, maybe what your competitors are doing. That also can cause what I call messiness. And the messiness happens when the humans involved are either surprised, like they didn't see it coming, so they kind of freak out a little bit, or they knew it was coming, but they're afraid of it. And what it triggers, and this is why I wanted to put these two things together. So pause on messiness for a second and let's just talk about the 4 stages of how adults learn. And you can apply this to any learning. Stick with me because I'm going to put these things together, and I hope it's going to bring some light bulbs for you. And then I'm going to tell you how to use this information to get through the messiness and change faster and better, and hopefully with less drama. Okay, so adult learning theory has 4 stages. I did not make this up. It's been around a very, very long time. I can put the links in if you don't believe me. Anyway, I outline it for you. So most adults, think about this, think about yourself, are going through life and we have a comfort zone and we are comfortable doing certain things. We are unconsciously competent at a lot of things. Now, an example I always use and people get it is if you drive, which most of the people here probably have learned to drive and drive, you can be driving and you actually don't have to think about doing it. Like, you've been doing it for so long, your brain can be thinking about a whole bunch of things and your body knows how to drive the car. That is an example of having like a true unconscious competence, right? I'm good at it. I can do it. I don't have to actually think about it consciously. I can think about other stuff while I'm doing it. Now, adult learning theory says that when you have to learn something new, the first thing that happens when something new is in front of you. So think about it. It can be an upgrade on your phone. It could be getting a new car and like things are all in a different place, right? Like they moved the transmission from being in the middle of the car to up here by the steering wheel to now it's like a button. Great example. You go through a period of time where all of a sudden you are consciously incompetent. Now, depending on what it is that you have to learn, that can last for a few minutes or it could last for months. So if you think about the kind of change that often happens in large organizations, like let's say you change your accounting system or you bring in Salesforce. It's a really great example because a lot of our clients have had this. And all of a sudden there's new processes. There's new functionality maybe in your devices or on your computer or in a software program. And that impacts maybe your customer relationship and your relationship with other departments inside the organization. So all of a sudden, everybody has to rethink and start doing a whole bunch of new things. So what happens in that process is that we become consciously incompetent. Now, when I say the word competence or incompetence, some people get triggered by that. I'm not saying you're dumb. So please don't think that. What I am saying is you are now aware that you don't know how to do something. And we as adults and our ego, our identity, does not like to be incompetent. So it might be a reality. Things changing all around us all the time. We don't like it. You may not even know that you don't like it. In fact, I've run into a lot of people in coaching. Sometimes I'm like this, where I say I like change and I say I like to learn new things. Most of us don't actually really like the discomfort that happens in our body when we don't know how to do something. So in adult learning, we go from being aware, consciously incompetent, to now becoming consciously competent. That's when you start to master the new task, right? So your awareness is on this. I'm conscious of it. So first I'm conscious that I don't know how to do the new thing. Then I become conscious that I am becoming more competent. As I learn and practice and start to use it, I go, woohoo, I know how to do this. And then it starts to become unconscious, right? Like we start to practice being unconsciously competent, right? The more you do something, the more you practice, the more you are doing it on a regular basis, it will become what we call second nature. It'll start to be a part of your comfort zone. Here's all the terminology that we use to explain when we don't have to think about it anymore. Now, the reason I'm putting these two ideas together is because what I have seen in startup environments is that when it gets messy, if there are people who are either unaware that the messiness is coming, or they have a low tolerance for feeling like they don't know what they're doing, they don't like watching other people struggle to learn new things. And in startup environments, what I see is because we're laying the groundwork, sometimes we're inventing things from scratch. You can't take a process that you used in your old job. Many people think that they can do this, right? Like, oh, I've worked in a startup before, so I worked in a big company before. I'm going to go work here, and I'm going to bring all my knowledge and skills and process and tools from all those other experiences. Well, you're going to reference them, but it's only in a small percentage of time that you can actually take old knowing, an old process, an old tool, and make it work 100% of the time in this new situation. Because the situation contextually is different. There's other people, and they probably have opinions, and they also have experiences that they want to bring in. And so what starts to happen is that all is a bit chaotic for a while. And if you don't know what's happening, most likely it could make you upset at yourself or others. It could make you more than upset, where you maybe start to get indignant or say and do things where you're kind of either feeling shame yourself or shaming other people for not kind of learning faster or doing it right faster. What I see in many environments, by the way, could be a startup, could be a big company, could be a family, is that when we don't understand the learning theory that I was telling you about earlier, and we are not aware of it, but also creating the space for the humans to move through those stages, we make the mistake of judging, probably too quickly, whether a person's going to be able to do it or not. And what that creates is drama inside the relationships that's actually unnecessary. So the reason I put this blog together with these concepts is that what I have seen over and over again. So I highly recommend you take some advice here and learn about learning theory, learn your own way through the stages. In other words, pay attention and ask yourself, like, what have you had to learn in the past? How fast did you learn those things? How did it feel for you in the times where you were feeling incompetent, maybe frustrated because in the learning process you started to make mistakes and you didn't want anybody to know about it, or maybe you did and you felt shame that they knew about it. And by the way, I want to highlight to you that this is easy work that I'm telling you about here. Awareness is one of the easiest things you can do for yourself. Becoming aware of your own processes. And then as you accept, how fast or slow you learn and what it feels like when you are totally don't even know what you don't know, and moving into knowing what you don't know, consciously incompetent, and then moving into consciously competent, right? Every time you learn something, every time we change something, you are going to go through those stages. And like I was saying before, some of us move through some of those stages very, very quickly. What I've learned is that you as a leader, a parent, a coworker, a partner, can help yourself and others by making this known, what I'm teaching you today. Go ahead and reteach it to people. Download the blog. Give it to your whole team. Give it to your family. This is normal. As things change, we all have to go through the stages. If we can speak transparently and authentically with each other about the stages when we're actually in them, what it does is it takes away the shame of us believing that we either need to hide it from people, that we're feeling incompetent, or the need to kind of hold a bunch of fear in our body that we may never learn, and maybe that our ego, our identity might be struggling because we're so afraid that we might never be good again. Like, oh, this new thing is hard. I may never be good at this. And so are they going to fire me? Right? And that's the last thing I want to say today is we have a lot of people in the workplace who, since the pandemic, have been struggling to learn the new way. I still have coaching with people who don't like doing meetings on Zoom. And it's 2024. We've been doing this a long time. But they don't like it, and they don't feel confident, and they don't feel competent at it. And since then, what I've noticed, you may have noticed too, is that because hybrid has become more normal, we're also using other tech and other collaborative softwares and other devices and apps and things to do the things that before 2020, we might have been doing it in person, or maybe we weren't using technology to do it. So I want you to understand there are still people who are struggling to figure out, like, I was really good at my job before we did it this way. And now if this is the new normal and we're going to be so dependent on technology and AI and all the things that everybody keeps telling us we better get a handle on, well, there's a whole bunch of people, you might be one of them, who are probably having moments of doubt. In coaching, sometimes I experience that people are having what we call crisis of confidence because there's so much changing in and around them that they don't know how they're going to be good at all of it if the new world's going to require all of these new things. So I'm going to wrap this up. I know I gave you a lot today. I would highly recommend, like I said before, that you get very familiar with how you process through the stages of learning, specifically around what it feels like to you when you are aware that you don't know how to do something, and how you cross that bridge. Like, how do you learn? Are you a person that dives in and goes after competence, or are you a person that gets afraid of it and sometimes resists and procrastinates or puts off learning the new thing until you have to do it? No shame. Like, I want you to be aware of you. And then I promise you will also start to see and become aware of the learning style of the people around you. And if you're in an environment, whether it's a startup, a big company, a family going through a lot of change, it will help if this conversation can become transparent and authentic, and everyone can start talking about how they're moving through the learning that has to go with change. All change requires us to learn something new. I know a lot of people don't get that. In change management, we often think change is going to happen, you got to do it, get over it. And that's just not the way we work. It's not the way you work. It's not the way I work. That's the human condition, right? We're actually pretty smart, and we're built to be flexible and to thrive and to change over time. But over time is the key part. So instead of allowing yourself and other people to get stuck and or potentially give up, create space for conversations around learning and help people get whatever support they need so that they can actually move through those stages faster. We are all able to do that, but we can't do it if we're trying to pretend like it's not happening. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week for Deep Work Fast. Bye-bye.